Good morning, everybody. My name is Ellen Blathers. I'm the Executive Director of Serenity Inns. Am I too loud? Because I can talk loud naturally. I think I want to start with playing the video first. Can we?
Let's see, you've got. So do you have the lapel on? Let's turn that off. It's very complicated, people.
I'm definitely not tech savvy.
Recovery isn't just stop using drugs. There's a lot more sober living houses than there are treatment facilities, and this is a lot more than a sober living house. Serenity Inns is a treatment center that creates a family environment. Individuals that have come here and have, successfully gone their way are always coming back because we created that family sense. We have an alumni association to keep all the guys together that have been here throughout the years. We got guys with over 10 years clean, and then we got the new guys with 1 year. They mentor those new guys.
See, that's what I like about this program, because the counselors and the innkeepers, they're approachable. I can go to them and talk to them about a situation. I was in a program once before, and I couldn't even approach the counselors. Make an appointment with me. What? Man, I'm going through an issue now. This issue might cause me to go back out there, man. You want me to come and see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock? My issue is now, here, at 6:30.
You've got to be serious about being clean and sober to live here. If you're not, you won't make it. A lot of places, the only thing when you go to a sober place or a sober living house or even treatment place, the only rule is you don't drink, you don't use drugs, but you don't learn anything while you're there. Here you're going to learn about yourself. You're going to learn about what to do when you get back out there. We use a word through AA and NA called a relapse prevention plan, like what you're going to do when you're back out in the real world if something does come by or you are offered drugs or alcohol. And that's the way I kind of look at this, is I'm using the Serenity Inns as a way to build a really good relapse prevention plan. What am I going to do to not drink again?
This is more family-oriented. I like when I get off work and I have to, I start walking up these stairs. You know what I mean? Because when they greet you, they greet you wholeheartedly.
And dinner fellowship is provided by the people that provide for the house, and that's why it's so important to us. We kind of do turn our dinner fellowship into like a little NA or AA meeting. We ask a question for the residents and a question for the guests, and our question always has to be drug or alcohol related. Without those dinner fellowships, like I said, those are the people that make this place run. It wouldn't survive without them. Addiction doesn't know any racial, economic boundaries. It reaches everybody today. We're in an epidemic right now, and often people thinking this can't happen to it'll never happen in my family. To find out it does happen in their family. Being in this process, I don't think there's a family that hasn't been touched by an individual with addiction.
The name speaks for itself. You find a lot of serenity here.
Good morning. It is very hard to look at that video without crying because you realize what God has done for Serenity Inns. I'm going to start to spiel with how did we get started, because for some of you, you don't know how we came about. Serenity Inns was birthed out of 5 ELCA churches. They were Reformation, All People's Cross, Hephatha, and Incarnation. These churches in the late 90s and early 2000s were struggling with congregation members who were fighting addictions or alcoholism or losing loved ones to the problems. And so they wanted to do something about it, but not reinvent the wheel, so to speak. At the time, our assistant to the bishop, Rick Dinas, he had been in California. He heard a man by the name of David Erickson speak. And David Erickson at the time was the president of Serenity Inns in Washington, D.C. And he talked about how they had a comprehensive program that covered every aspect of the person's life and getting them back to living in recovery. So he pulled a group of us together. We went to Washington, D.C. We were so impressed with what they did, and they became our mentors. They helped us get off the ground and get started. So we found a house. Habitat for Humanity partnered with us. Many of you don't know that Habitat stepped up and did all the renovations and partnered with us. So we are Habitat homeowners, and we received our first gentleman in the house in April 2004. The first couple of years one thing about working with a transient community, it's kind of hard to compile data, but we work to try to do that anyway, as much data as we can. And what we found that a lot of the men did not have what was needed to stay in recovery. So we kind of revamped our program, and we started taking men with 3 to 5 days of clean time. So we require that now all they have to do is go to detox. And the reason we do detox is because people that are coming off of opiates or heroin and alcohol, their detox can be very dangerous for their health. So they need to be in a medical environment, a safe environment. And when they come to us, they can be with us up to 7 months. So for the first 30 to 45 days, they are not to have any contact with family, friends, or anyone. We take their cell phones. So they don't have cell phones that they can use for that first 30 to 45 days. Because we want them to focus on what got them there. Because when you unpack the alcohol and the drugs, it's a lot of trauma that they've experienced in their life that they're packed away and they haven't addressed, that we try to open up. So when they get there, they're given a folder, a couple folders about this thick. And they have an assignment they have to do within that first 48 hours that's called Who Am I? And 80% of the time, they have to rewrite that assignment. We don't look at the grammar or the spelling or anything like that. We look at you unpacking what got you there. So oftentimes, they're going to write this great person. You are this great person, but what kind of individual were you when you're on the alcohol and drugs? That's what we want to get at. So they have to do that. They have to do stuff like, they have to write their own obituary. And that's probably one of the most difficult assignments they have to do, because they have to be honest about what is it they think people will say about them. They write a letter called, they write a paper called I Apologize. So that's the people that they've hurt. More often than not, your parents, your siblings, your mates that they've hurt. They've done damage to their children. One example is that we had a gentleman that lost a girlfriend while he was actively using. And to help him with that grief, we suggested that he write a letter. And he wrote a letter and took it out to the cemetery and buried it beside her. And that helped him to move on from that grief. Now, the 7 months of the program, they go to meetings, 3 meetings a day before they get back. So they're out of the house by 6 o'clock in the morning. They have to be out by 6 because they have a meeting that they have to be at 7 o'clock in the morning. They leave that meeting. They have another meeting they have to be at by 9:15. They leave that meeting. They have 11 o'clock meeting. So they get back to us about 12:15 in the afternoon. And we give them time to decompress, so to speak. And then they have a meeting at the end. We have three meetings a week at the end. The counselor, we have two counselors that work with them through the course of the week. And then they do spiritual growth with me on Friday nights. Now, the spiritual growth component is to help them reconnect with God as they understand it. Some of the guys are struggling with their relationship with God. Others who say they don't believe. Others who have never had the experience of going to church or things like that. So we use that time to help them understand that God loves them so much and they have so much value and worth. So that's the example of some of the meetings they have to do. Now, when they get to phase up, which everybody wants to do after this 30th day, so we generally phase them up between 30 and 45 days. What do we look at is their progress. How are they doing? Do we feel like if they go out there and they start looking for a job, will they be safe? Will they be able to identify some of the challenges that they faced that led them to use it so that they can get up and go to work every day? So that's the things we look at. And once they do that, we suggest they find therapeutic employment. Now, some of the guys have had jobs where they worked made $17, $18, and $19 an hour. We suggest they don't do that because when you made that kind of money, what did you do with it? You used it. So we suggest that you find a job making $10 and $11 an hour. And that doesn't go over very well, I know. But it teaches them how to manage their money. One of the things they have to do once they start working, they have to sign their checks over to us. They're given a stipend every week, but they have to sign their checks over. So some of the places now pay with a debit card, so they have to bring their debit cards in, and they give them to me, and we take the money off every week. Now, their stipend they get can go from $35 to $50 a week. They're given a little book that serves as their little register. They're given an envelope that they have to keep their receipts. And so they have to account for every penny they spend. And that's to help them learn how to manage their money because they won't be with us forever. And they have to be able to go out and pay their bills, be accountable to their children if they have children. Just learning how to do simple things that we all take for granted that we do every day. They need to learn how to do again. So once they've completed that phase from that 45th day to that 6 or 7 month, then we have, in 2014, we have Alumni Association that started, and that was a way to help us keep the men together because we are dealing with a transient community. And a lot of the men ended up having to move back into their same environment because if you have a criminal history or you have a bad credit history, it's hard to get a good place to live. Now, if you want to live any place, that's possible. But to get a safe place to live, it becomes very hard for them. So the Alumni Association told us that was their biggest challenge, finding a safe place to live. And in 2016, we purchased a 9-unit apartment building. So each man can live in that apartment. 2 men live together in the apartment. It's a 2-bedroom, completely furnished apartment. They can continue to be there for an additional 18 months so that when they do go back out into the community, they have over 2 years of clean time. 2 years in recovery. Now, programming does take place. They don't get to move into the apartment and that they get to do whatever they want. They have to go to work. They can't have overnight guests. They have to, if they're going to be out overnight, they have to let us know. They have group sessions that they have to do. They have one-on-ones they do with the counselor. They have random drug testing. Because if they come up, I'm going to give you an example. If a gentleman comes up positive over there, he's put out for 30 days because he needs to go and find an outpatient program or some kind of plan to address what caused the relapse. Now, we will let him come back in, but he has to have something to show the counselor that he did something about it. And most times the guys will go to the Dewey Center or someplace like that to get this outpatient treatment, and that counselor will stay in touch with our counselor, Jason Dobson, until they move out. Now, if a guy, we drug test twice a week at the end. So if a guy comes up positive at the end, he's immediately dismissed from the program. One of the things we do is that we'll take any man who doesn't have a sexual assault in his criminal history or who has not been diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic. However, when we assess them, they're given the rule book to read prior to their admission, so that we ask them, do you understand the rules? Are you willing to adhere to the rules and the policy and the guidelines? So they know before they admitted to the program. Now, to help you to understand the gravity of how bad it is, in the city of Milwaukee, in a month's time from July to August, there were 127 probable overdose deaths in the city. Milwaukee County is on track to report 453 probable overdose deaths by the end of 2019. Serenity Inns can fill a bed in 24 hours. We had 3 guys graduating this week. We already have 10 people. We have to decide which 3 of those 10 will get a bed. Please ask questions anytime. Jump in. I'd rather answer questions just to talk. I spend plenty of time talking with the men, so anytime I get to ask questions, I'm okay.
What happens to those other 7? What do they do? The ones who you don't have room for.
We try to, Serenity Inns, in addition to having an apartment building and the inn, the residential, we do have an outpatient now that meets 3 days a week. That Jason Dobson, the guy that you saw in the video, our lead counselor, he oversees that. So we're giving them something. We realize that we can only house 12, but we want to give people something. We just don't want to turn people away. And hopefully the outpatient helps them get into a stable situation, that in the meantime they find some safe housing or one of the housing programs that they can go into until they can get into a residential. Yes, ma'am.
Where do the people with bipolar and schizophrenia go?
We try to send them to the Dewey Center or some other facility that offers a psychiatrist. The reason we don't take those individuals, not that we don't want to, it's just that it's not fair, because oftentimes people treat either the addiction or the mental illness. And in order for that individual to be successful, you need to treat both. And so we don't have a psychiatrist yet. It's on my wish list. On duty to help us with that, but we're looking toward the future. Yes, sir.
If you woke up tomorrow and funding weren't an issue, how would Serenity Inns look different from your perspective?
Oh, we would have 5, 6 Serenity Inns by the end of the week. Well, we get calls all the time for women, and we try to send them to Maida House. Maida House has a very good program with a very long history, so we try to send them there. But Serenity Inns has been asked on several occasions, when are we going to start something for women? But we're right now we're working with men, and we feel like there's still a lot to do to help men live in recovery. Because when we started, any given night, there were 1,000 men homeless, and of that 1,000, 80% of them were struggling with an addiction. So that's why we started with men.
So when you're talking about the fact that you have 10 people who are interested in 3 beds, what kinds of things do you look at to determine who gets accepted into the program?
First call, first serve. Because you get some people that call and they never call back. And then you get some people that want it so bad, they'll call every other day. And it's those people we try to take first. Because, like I said, if funding was an issue, we'd have Serenity Inns everywhere. And not just to have it, but just to have that because the problem is so bad. We get calls from parents. That's for me, that's probably the hardest call to get from a parent who says, you know, when I said we'd have no room, and they'll get mean with you, but then they just break down, well, what am I to do? And you try to talk them through. Basically, you're talking them off the edge because they're ready to jump themselves. And so we do a lot of that. And that's hard to have to tell them that, you know, we have no room. But here's what we can tell you you can do. Maybe this will help you. And we let them know that, please feel free to call us back if you got another question. We're here to support you. Questions, questions, questions. Don't be shy. I rather.
Can you tell me more about St. Matthew's and Dinner Fellowship?
St. Matthew's, I love you guys. One of the components of Serenity Inns is Dinner Fellowship. And we ask people to prepare a meal and come in and sit down and eat dinner with the men every day. Now that has a twofold benefit. The benefit that the volunteer gets because they see the real face of addiction, not what you see in the media and on TV and all those places. And you get to live out your faith journey. And for the men, they get to see people that really care about them, not the people that they got high with or they drank with or the people that wanted something in exchange, but people who honestly, genuinely care. And would you say, Virginia, maybe 60 or 70% of the time, we have men that tell us they never sat down and ate dinner with their families. And that just, for me, that's probably the hardest part because if you grew up, if you like me, you grew up doing that. It's so natural. So it's such a benefit and experience for them to have people come in and sit down and eat dinner with them. And you guys have been so faithful. I'm looking at she just talked about how 3 of the guys are graduating and how she sat and talked and seen how the guys, I think she could tell better than I can about the Dinner Fellowship. You wanna say a little something? You know I love you. We'll try to put you on the spot.
Oh, thank you. Well, Rachel's a coordinator for our monthly meal, which is on Sunday, the second Sunday of the month. And Rachel and I often go. I've gotten a lot out of going myself. Feels a little selfish. It's an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity to sit down with people who maybe we wouldn't encounter each other.
Yeah.
And sit down and have a real conversation and honest conversation. And I think, if they would see me walking down the street, they might ignore me. I may not approach them. And a lot of them have been through a lot, and maybe they've been in prison. They've gone through addiction, and some of them 10, 20 years they've been addicted. So their life, they've been through a lot of ups and downs. But when it really comes down to it, the conversation is just about being human and about struggles, and that's what I've experienced there. And sharing the meal, and they always appreciate a good home-cooked meal. And I think there's that feeling of, wow, I didn't know that you could just share this way and live this way. And I think it's a simple way of sharing time with somebody. And they share their stories, and I'm always just amazed at how articulate they are, and to be in a room of men, which traditionally maybe men don't share as much, and that's part of their recovery. So they're talking about what they're going through, about their feelings and their struggle, and you can see that when they understand how important that is to get through their recovery, that they're really committed to that and to that conversation. And so that's been my experience. And okay, thanks.
Thank you. So please join us for dinner. I always tell people, please join us for dinner. It's a life-changing experience. Questions? Any more questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
How do you supply all the meals for?
People bring them. People prepare. We have people that bring meals 365 days a year. So we have on our website, there's a calendar. So you can go in there and you see if it's an open date. And if it's an open date, you can pick it up. You can call me. You can call Virginia. I'm sorry. You can email us and just say you want to take that date. We have some churches that come 2 days a month. We have some churches that sign up for 3 days a month. We even have a group of probation officers that come every other month. And they bring their families. And that was a little interesting for the guys to get used to, but now they love it. Yes.
I do have a question. So one question I have is, or there's two questions. One is about the alumni house and what are opportunities to volunteer or to help, what kind of assistance when they're in the alumni house?
Well, the Alumni House offers dinner fellowship 2 days a month, 2 Tuesdays a month, because their schedule's a little different. Because now they have the freedom to work the hours that they want to work with the job, and some of them work nights, some of them work second shift. We have a couple who work second shift, so that's the difference now. But people do have it. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, many of the residents, I assume, have some local relatives or family. Is there any program that helps them to deal with the problems that are part of having a member who is in this program?
There are programs available for families to help with, to understand the problem with addiction. But we ourselves, we work directly with the men because we want to help them to understand and interact with their families. Excuse me. Some of these guys have caused their families a lot of pain, and so we need to help them understand that, okay, if that person came and seen you in day 45 and was all happy, now day 65, you got a job and stuff, and they may not want to see you, that understand that's the pain you caused, and that's why. So we, instead of, helping with the family too and that individual, we decided that we need to work with that individual because it's so much that we have to cover. And we are a small organization. Virginia is the only other woman that's been there since me. And we just hired a couple of innkeepers. So we now have 5 innkeepers on staff. And all 5 of the innkeepers are alumni, are graduates of the program. Jason Dobson, our lead addictions counselor, is a graduate of the program. Yes.
How do you help the residents and the alumni cope when they rebuild bonds with each other, and when somebody does start using again? How do they cope with that?
It's hard. It's hard. I'm quite sure since you come regularly, you noticed several guys that are missing that were there when you, and they are saddened by it. But we tell them when they walk in the door, look to your left and look to your right. Those people you see now may not be the people that are here when you get ready to graduate. And that's the reality, because what we do, a lot of places don't do. And that means we help them unpack the ugliness of addiction. And oftentimes people get scared. They feel, by the time they get to us, they're so beat down and broken. We've had guys that grew up in, North Shore or Mequon, and parents have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on treatment. It didn't work. And now they're there with us. And so instead of the usual, we get at what got you there. And we teach you how to accept responsibility for your actions, because now you don't get to get off scot-free, Well, this is when I was in my addiction, but, you owe some people some apologies and some better behavior and some better decision making. So, yes, ma'am.
Do you have connections with some health organization for physical problems?
Okay, we have a doctor that comes in when they first come in, because one of the issues with alcoholics and heroin addicts is they don't sleep once they're coming off. And so the doctor comes in and gives them something to help them sleep, because if we can't get them to get a good night's sleep, we can't work with them. It's really hard to try to work with them, because you got to try to settle them down and get them to focus. So we have a doctor that comes in. And so if they have something that's a major issue, then we'll try to get them, we'll get them to a hospital or something that they can see a doctor.
I have a question in a bit of a different direction. Ellen, what prompted you to become part of Serenity Inns? How long have you been there? I think it's been a while, and you're clearly passionate. So can you share more about that?
Oh, wow. Let me see if I can share my story. I'm going to share the G version, okay? Since we're being taped. I come from my own personal journey with addiction. And when I heard about the mission team being formed at Serenity Inns, I jumped for a chance to get involved. And, I'm a firm believer that God gave me the second chance, and I didn't want to let him down. So anytime I can do something to make him proud, I don't mind doing it. And I felt like coming to work for Serenity Inns was doing that. And when I started at Serenity Inns, I was working part-time. I had gave up a full-time job to go over to work at Serenity Inns. And so for a while, I worked part-time. That didn't go well with my husband. But I stuck with it. And there was another lady named Joy True. She was the executive director. In 2008, 2009, Serenity Inns went through a kind of a lull, for lack of a better word. A lot of the foundations were experiencing a financial crisis because of the economy. And so she decided to retire. And so I was so committed, I stayed. And for a short time, we had to work, the staff that was there had to work without a salary, and we did. And I've been the executive director ever since. I don't have I do have an education background, but not in addictions. I got my bachelor's from Cardinal Stritch in business management, my MBA from Grand Canyon University. And please pray for me, I'm writing my dissertation. And that's a journey in itself.
What is your dissertation?
My dissertation is on nonprofit organization leaders. I'm talking about how over the past 10 years, nonprofit organizations have lost, over the country, have lost more than 2 million individuals who have left the nonprofit, and they're taking their knowledge with them. So how do you prepare the next generation? And a lot of these nonprofits are small. They don't have the wherewithal to pay for a big leadership development program. So I'm saying, look at the people that you serve, look at the people that you have on staff, and how can you capture what they have and their passion to put them in a leadership role. And I'm using the Leadership Challenge by Coos and Posner's. They talk about encourage the heart, vision, and other aspects to get that person into a leadership role. And I've written 158 pages. And it's so bad, my husband moved me out the dining room into the back room and said, and closed the door. So, yes, yeah.
What kind of relationship do you have with the residents? Because
Did they say something nice about me?
well, they have a lot of respect for you. They really respect you, and how do you see your relationship with them?
I see my relationship with them as that I get up every day and I say, God, I may be the only person that reflects Christ in this individual's life. So let me do it in a way that they receive it and that they grow from it. So I treat them with dignity and respect at all times. Even when I chew them out, I don't chew them out in front of anybody. I pull them into my office, and they know when I'm calling them into my office, they're in trouble. I don't cuss at them. I call them sirs. It's just a matter of developing a relationship. And you have to be honest. You have to be honest because that's what they need, honesty. You know, we can come and put on so many airs, but they know. So I just keep it very honest with the men. And we have a pretty good team of individuals. We have a BS detector that's just unbelievable.
That's not bad for the science.
No. Yes, ma'am.
How are you different, say, from Repairs of the Breach or House of Hope? You know?
We're different because we take the men, first of all, we take men with 3 to 5 days of clean time. A lot of men we take don't have clothes. They may not even have shoes. We've taken men that came from detox in a blanket. And we provide them with clothes. We provide them with underwear. We provide them with new underwear. We don't give them used underwear. We provide them with new underwear because that's to help them understand they have value, they have worth. And once we take them in an environment that's a family environment that's full of love. Because when we bring them in that door and we're doing the assessment, guys that are there that'll walk up and introduce themselves and say, welcome to Serenity Inn. Say, man, this is a really good place to be here. I've been here so many days. I've been here this many months. I'm getting ready to graduate. And I think that's what sets us apart, that family environment that they feel from the time they walk in the door to the time they graduate. Yes, sir.
You talked a little bit about the real face of addiction versus what we see in the media or in movies or TV or stuff like that. What do you sense are some of the greatest myths or untruths about addiction that we can unlearn in our own supportive folks?
The greatest myth about addiction is that, I think this is the number one myth, that individuals that are addicted weren't raised right or don't come from two-parent homes. I think that's the biggest myth because we get a lot of guys that have two-parent homes. And it's something inside of them that happened that maybe they packed away and never dealt with that now they have to come to terms with.
Is the opioid issue, is that drying up with all the legality that is headed at the sellers of this stuff?
No. No, absolutely not.
So the availability is as
Absolutely.
strong as
Absolutely. And if, and then you think about it. I'll use a good example. If GM dry up tomorrow, aren't there other car dealerships? So if you take one person out of the equation, there's 5 coming behind them that is still, and it's not taking the legal part, taking it away from 'em. If you take the desire from people to use, then you have no customers. What are you going to sell if you have nobody to sell it to? Yes, ma'am.
Do you allow men to smoke or vape? Or do you, is that?
We allow them to smoke. I've raised $100 worth of saying about vaping.
Sorry?
I said I've raised $100 worth of saying about vaping. I'm totally opposed to vaping. I'm totally opposed to smoking, but when they come in, they're so. We had a guy that came in the door. He was so shaky. It took him 4 months to stop shaking. And so you really don't want to take everything from them all at once. That can create so many problems. So, yes, sir.
Are you seeing meth addiction?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is that increasing?
Yes, sir. And part of that is opiate related. So that guys, when you get them off of opiates and they start using again, they use meth or cocaine, thinking, well, okay, I'm not using opiate, but you're trading one addiction for another. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have an opinion, and I don't remember the term, but some cities are having a place that's safe to either use or dispense drugs? I mean, and I think it's somewhat controversial at this point. What is it? Harm reduction. Yeah, do you have an opinion on that type of solution?
My mother taught me that if I can't say anything nice, don't say anything. And I still do what my mother says.
That's the best not answer I've heard in a long time.
What kind of chores do these men have living with you? Do they do dishes? Do they clean house? Do they whatever?
They do everything. The place is, one thing you're going to walk into Serenity Inns and notice how spotless it is. Everybody has to do chores. They don't do chores, they're on restriction for the whole weekend. So if you take a phase 2 guy that's work all week and plan to spend the weekend with his girlfriend, that doesn't go well if he has to stay in the whole weekend. So they have to do chores. And our innkeepers check the chores to make sure they've done it. That's why when you come in for dinner, they wash up your dishes, they walk you in and they walk you out. And they carry your stuff for you and they make sure everything you brought in is clean. So it's mandatory they do chores.
Another reason to volunteer.
Like I say, questions. You can't ask me a question that I won't answer except for the one she just asked.
Do you know, are there how many nights during a month are unscheduled right now? Do you have a lot of?
Right now, we are doing about 4 nights a month, and that's only because we have several churches that are aged out. Volunteers who have been doing it since the doors open, and now they just can't get out like they used to. So we have to try to replace those individuals. So it's running like 4 to 6 nights a month. And we have Virginia Zane, go back there, is our development director, administration director. And she's also the person that works with people for Dinner Fellowship. So she can answer all your questions regarding Dinner Fellowship. Any more questions?
I'm Rachel Vetter. I'm the volunteer coordinator. Face to face. Maybe you've gotten an email if you're on the list. But if you're interested in volunteering, just please let me know. My email address is in the announcements. We'd be more than happy to have more volunteers.
And I don't think there's never been a meal brought that the guys didn't eat. So.
And I think just to follow up with Rachel, you can sign up through the bulletin too. We do the second Sunday of the month. St. Matthew's does, but obviously you can go onto the website and perhaps access another date or time if that works better for you, just directly through Serenity Inns. But if you're interested, I'll just leave a sign-up sheet on the counter. So if after what you've heard today, you're thinking you'd like to volunteer, I'll leave a sheet there and give that to Rachel so that she can follow up with you and connect you with a chance to serve at Serenity Inns. I've served a few times with my son who is now in college, and it was just a very meaningful, surprising experience, and the guys were great. Super polite, friendly, helpful, and we really enjoyed the time, and I'd highly recommend it. You make a meal, it's a 2-hour commitment, and it's very insightful, like Kelly was saying.
Two things I want to add to that. One is that the men love when you bring kids in and young people, because as you know, as parents, young people don't listen to us. When they become teenagers, they stop listening. But they are, they are captivated when they sit there and listen to those men talk about addiction and tell them, I was your age when I got started. Here's why you don't fall into peer pressure. Here's why you make better choices, because you don't want to be my age. That's number one. The other thing I wanted to touch on is that Serenity Inns doesn't take any government money, and we raise our money through donations from foundations, churches, individuals, and companies. And like I said, Virginia is our wonderful development director. She does a great job of doing that each year.
Are there foods we shouldn't bring? Are sweets okay for dessert? We've wondered about that.
How many sweets can you bring?
Sweets are okay.
Sweets is never an issue. Now, we may have a guy or two that comes in that doesn't eat pork, but the dinner fellowship coordinator will send you an email and let you know that. So in case you have to bring something additional for that person. But other than that, it's pretty simple. And as you know, you never can go wrong with chicken. Well, if no more questions,
We're at time too. It's great.
thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And appreciate all that you do for the men. Sure. I don't know how to turn it off, so. Oh, okay. I see.